going to be a little different for me because this is a response video that I'm not actually responding to anything. I've included a video done by Troy Levitt that made me think about this, so I'm going to use it as a springboard into my own thoughts. But by all means, go watch that video because it explains the background behind GamerGate in a lot of detail and it asks some interesting questions. That said though, I've never really paid the slightest bit of attention to games press. I'm a gamer. I have been for decades. In fact, the very first game I ever played was probably Pong back on this system in the early 70s. I've seen every system come about and I've played most of them. I saw the rise and the fall of the video arcade. I've seen the entire history of video games from beginning to present, and the one thing I never did was pay any attention whatsoever to video game journalism. Why? Because it seemed blatantly obvious to me that they were biased. These magazines and now websites exist to sell advertising. So who do they sell it to? The game makers. So the idea that games magazines are going to write really scathing reviews of games while they're running an ad for that game in the same magazine seemed like a really odd idea. Yes, I've seen it happen, but it seems to me to be rather rare. And I'd much rather pay attention to what actual gamers have to say, people with no profit motive, than to what a paid reviewer has to say. So it really came as no surprise to me at all when GamerGate broke out. The idea of integrity in games journalism was a strange one to me already. I don't expect it, which is why I don't pay attention to any gaming magazines or websites, and I never have. It doesn't surprise me that games journalists can be bought or screwed or otherwise influenced to give good reviews to games that don't deserve it on their own. It's like wondering if water is wet. Of course it is. So when GamerGate came up, not only was I not surprised, I was more surprised than anybody else was. And as the years have gone on, now we have a new version of GamerGate that really shouldn't have shocked anyone. The whole fake news and the mainstream media nonsense. Why did anybody trust these people in the first place? I mean, we've had major news networks for decades that have worn their political slant on their sleeves. MSNBC has been openly on the left, and Fox News has been openly on the right. Does anyone seriously think that they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Seriously? Does anyone in their right mind really believe that? And now, instead of it just being about advertisers and ad revenue, it's about ideology. It's about putting a distinctly left-wing or right-wing spin on the news. They're trying to appeal to a particular type of audience, and if they have to lie to do so, that's fine with them. It's really what fake news is, after all. Getting the right kind of eyeballs on your show because that's what the owners of those eyeballs want to see. Is it any wonder our media is as screwed up as it is? It stopped being about telling the truth and informing the public and started being all about creating a narrative for the benefit of the news outlet. And isn't that exactly what those game journalists were doing over in the gaming press? Creating a narrative, making money, and in some cases, just getting their rocks off. They aren't doing it for the good of the audience or for the good of the public. They're doing it for the good of themselves, and they probably always have been. So I've really got to ask, does anyone really trust the media at all these days? Have you ever? Why in the world is anyone surprised that this kind of thing happens? In fact, in a recent Gallup poll, the trust in the media is at its lowest ever. And it's still falling! Trust in local media sources is greater than trust in national sources, and trust in social media sources is at the bottom of the pile. And I think that's because a lot of sources are ideologically driven, not fact-driven. They want to provide a spin on the news and tell the story that makes their side look good, instead of just reporting the facts dispassionately. That's why I don't pay any attention to any media source except for reporting quotes and other verifiable facts. I don't want to hear what things mean. I want to know what happened. I can make up my own mind what it means. But people are getting more and more lazy. Because we have a 24-hour news cycle, because there's so much information coming in, people no longer have the time and honestly don't care if they're getting the facts. They just want the news in quick snippets, and they want to be told not only what happened, but what to think about it. That's why the media has become what it's become, because people just don't have the time to hunt down the facts anymore. Unfortunately, this leads to corruption, which is rampant in the media. Vested interests with big wallets push media outlets to say certain things and to ignore others, to report certain stories and not others, to frame stories to favor one side and not the other, and in games journalism, to push games by their friends or that favor an agenda they like and to ignore other ideologies that they just don't like. It's the same problem I've always had with the media, that money and sex and influence sells, and that the journalists are more concerned with their own well-being than they are with the well-being of the public. They don't care about you. They never have, and they never will. You need to get over the idea that some monolithic company has your best interests at heart. They don't. And that means people need to get used to thinking for themselves, to looking at the news and filtering out the spin, being willing to do some fact-checking independently and figuring out what's really going on without uncritically accepting what the media has to say. And that goes for all media, including games journalism. If they say a game is great, accept that with a huge handful of salt. They're probably being paid to say that. Their magazine or website is probably getting bribed to say that. The journalist is getting something out of saying that. We've seen too many cases of this to ever trust them again without complete transparency, and I honestly don't think they can ever really provide that. Anyhow, what do you think? Now again, go watch Troy Levitt's video on the GamerGate side of things and make sure you leave comments for him as well. Do you think that the media is at all trustworthy? Do you think they ever were? Do you pay any attention to them whatsoever? No, I don't. I don't need anyone to tell me what to think. I just need the facts. I can figure out what they mean on my own, thank you very much. I do think we need to have a media that tells us what's going on without any political lean. Facts are apolitical. I'd love to see the commercial influence for the news be eliminated. In fact, for a long time, I thought the broadcast news needed to provide a certain amount of commercial-free news every day as a consequence of holding an FCC license. You get no money at all for informing the public. That has to be funded by the rest of your content. And I don't know that that would work anymore now that a lot of news networks are all news all the time. But it's a nice idea anyway. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you all soon.
Everything changes.